The blood-stained military glove that Max the dog brought back was just the beginning. It led his 7-year-old owner deep into the snowy forest, to a living secret tied tightly to a tree. But what they didn't know is that the hunters were now hunting them. The silence in the mountains of Montana was a living thing. It was a thick, heavy blanket of white, broken only by the whisper of wind through the skeletal branches of lodgepole pines and the soft crunch of snow underfoot. Here, nestled in a valley carved by ancient glaciers, sat a solitary log cabin, a plume of wood smoke rising from its stone chimney like a lonely gray signal. This was home for 7-year-old Lily and her father David. Lily, with her bright, inquisitive eyes the color of a summer sky and hair like spun corn silk that always escaped her pink woolen hat, was a child of the wilderness. She was bundled in a snowsuit so puffy it made her look like a miniature marshmallow, but it couldn't contain her boundless energy. Her father, David, was a man carved from the same mountains that surrounded them. In his late 30s, he had the quiet, watchful demeanor of someone who had seen more of the world than he cared to remember. His past life as an Army Ranger was something he never spoke of, but it lived in the disciplined way he stacked firewood, in the precise way he tracked game, and in the training he had given their only other companion, Max. Max was a magnificent German shepherd, 5 years old and in the prime of his life. His coat was a rich sable, a mixture of black and tan and gray that made him almost disappear against the shadowed trees. He was not a pet in the conventional sense. He was a partner. Trained by David with a quiet consistency, Max possessed a startling intelligence and a loyalty so profound it was a silent vow. He was Lily's shadow, her guardian, and her dearest friend. His temperament, a perfect balance of playful companion and vigilant protector. That afternoon, the lure of a snowshoe hare, its white winter coat, a fleeting ghost against the endless white, proved too tempting for Lily. Giggling, she gave chase, her short legs pumping as she followed the animal away from the cleared space around the cabin and into the deeper woods. Max, as always, was right beside her, his powerful form moving with an easy grace. The hare, a master of its domain, vanished in a flurry of powder, leaving Lily standing breathless and alone with her dog in the immense quiet. It was then that the atmosphere shifted. The playful air evaporated, replaced by a sudden, sharp tension. Max stopped dead, his head raised, his ears swiveling like radar dishes. A low rumble, too soft for human ears to catch, vibrated in his chest. He took a few steps forward, sniffing the air, his body language transforming from relaxed companion to alert professional. "What is it, boy?" Lily asked, her voice small in the vastness. Max ignored her. He was locked onto something, a scent, or a sound that was a discordant note in the forest's symphony. He let out a single, sharp bark, not of alarm, but of purpose. He looked back at Lily, then bolted into the trees. "Max, wait!" she called, a flicker of fear touching her heart. He was gone for only a minute, but it felt like an eternity. When he reappeared, trotting back through the snow, something was in his mouth. He came directly to Lily and dropped the object at her feet. It was a tactical glove, made of dark, durable fabric, and it was stained with a patch of crimson that stood out against the snow like a wound. Lily stared at it, her heart thumping against her ribs. This was wrong. This was a piece of wrongness that didn't belong in her world of snow angels and rabbit chases. Max nudged the glove with his nose, then let out another bark, this one insistent, demanding. He looked into her eyes, then turned and stared back into the woods from where he had come. He was telling her, not asking her, to follow. Trust in Max was as natural to Lily as breathing. She took a shaky breath, her earlier fear replaced by a strange, cold resolve, and followed her protector into the trees. He led her deeper than she had ever been before, weaving through dense stands of pine that blocked out the pale afternoon sun. The snow grew deeper, the silence more profound. Finally, Max slowed, whining softly as he approached a massive, ancient pine tree. And then, Lily saw it. Her breath hitched in her throat. A small, choked gasp. Slumped against the trunk, bound to the tree with thick rope wrapped around his chest and arms, was a man. He was older than her father. His short hair a distinguished silver gray at the temples. His face was pale and bruised, a cut on his forehead slowly weeping blood that had partially frozen on his skin. He wore military fatigues, torn and dirty, and one of his hands, now bare, was swollen and purple from the cold. He was perfectly still, his head slumped forward. For a terrible moment, Lily thought he was dead. She froze, a statue in a pink snowsuit, her mind unable to process the horrifying scene. It was too much. A nightmare image dropped into her waking life. She wanted to turn and run, to scream for her father. But her feet were rooted to the spot. It was Max who broke the spell. He walked slowly forward, his tail giving a single, hesitant wag. He didn't bark or growl. Instead, he stopped just before the unconscious man and gently nudged the man's bruised hand with his wet nose. He whined again, a soft, compassionate sound, and then looked back at Lily, his intelligent, amber eyes seeming to say, "It's okay. He needs us." That simple, gentle act of comfort from her dog cut through Lily's terror. It gave her the courage to take one small, crunching step forward, and then another, her voice a tiny, trembling whisper in the vast, cold silence. "Hello?" At the sound of Lily's small voice, the man's head stirred. He lifted it with a visible, painful effort, and a pair of steel-gray eyes, cloudy with exhaustion but sharpened by a lifetime of vigilance, focused on her. He took in the sight of the small girl in her puffy pink snowsuit and the magnificent dog standing calmly beside her. A flicker of disbelief crossed his features, quickly suppressed and replaced by an iron-willed composure. He couldn't show fear. He couldn't show weakness. Not in front of a child. "Hey there," he said, his voice a dry, hoarse rasp. "You two a little lost?" He tried for a smile, but it was more of a grimace of pain. Lily took another hesitant step forward. "You're hurt," she stated simply, her child's logic cutting through the complexity of the situation. "You're tied up." "That I am," the soldier admitted. "Listen to me very carefully. I need your help. I need you to be a very brave soldier for me. Can you do that?" Lily nodded, her eyes wide. "I need you to go home. Find your dad. You have to tell him something from me. You tell him the eagle has fallen. Can you remember that?" Lily's brow furrowed in concentration. "The eagle has fallen," she repeated softly. "That's right. Don't talk to anyone else. Just your dad." The man strained against his bonds, his gaze falling on the sleeve of his uniform. With a grunt of effort, he managed to work his fingers just enough to tear a small, embroidered patch from the fabric. It depicted a soaring eagle against a mountain peak. "Take this," he urged, letting it fall to the snow. "Give this to him. It's your proof." Lily crept forward and picked up the patch, its threads stiff with cold. She clutched it tightly in her gloved hand. As she stood up, the soldier's intense gaze shifted from her to the dog standing silently at her side. He looked directly into Max's intelligent eyes, a flicker of professional recognition passing between man and beast. "Protect her, trooper," the soldier commanded in a low, firm voice. "Everything depends on you now." It was at that exact moment that a new sound cut through the forest's quiet. It was distant but distinct, the mechanical whine of an engine, growing steadily closer. A cold dread washed over the soldier's face, a genuine fear not for himself, but for the child he had just endangered. "They're coming back," he whispered, his voice urgent. "You have to go. Now. Hide. And do not make a sound." Panic seized Lily's heart. But before she could react, Max was in motion. He gave her a firm nudge with his head, pushing her toward a thicket of dense, snow-laden fir trees. It was a clear, unmistakable command. "Get in there." As soon as she scrambled into the hiding spot, Max turned to face the direction of the approaching noise. He didn't cower or flee. Instead, he drew himself up to his full height, let out a loud, aggressive bark that shattered the silence, and then charged away from Lily's position, crashing through the underbrush like a wild, untamed animal. He was a blur of motion and noise, a deliberate and brilliant distraction. From her hiding place, Lily could hear the engine noise stop, followed by the sound of heavy boots crunching in the snow and harsh voices calling out. "What was that?" one said. "A wolf, maybe? Over there? Go check it out." Their attention was completely captured. They moved away from the clearing, drawn by the phantom beast Max was pretending to be. They were following the noise, moving farther and farther from the tied-up soldier and the hidden little girl. It was a gift of time, bought by the courage and intelligence of her dog. Lily knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones that she had to use it. Clutching the soldier's patch, she turned and ran, her small feet flying across the snow, tears of fear freezing on her cheeks as she headed for home. Max led the pursuers on a frantic chase deep into the woods before vanishing like a shadow, his movements too swift and cunning for them to follow. A few minutes after Lily had fled, as she paused to catch her breath, a familiar shape emerged silently from the trees beside her. It was Max. He was panting slightly, but unharmed, his amber eyes calm and focused. He nudged her hand gently, then took up his position at her side, ready to continue their mission. The forest had transformed. What was once Lily's familiar backyard playground had become a hostile, alien world. Every tree looked the same, every snowdrift was a featureless wave in an endless white ocean. The adrenaline that had propelled her initial flight had faded, leaving behind a deep, biting cold and the terrifying realization that she was utterly lost. Her small footprints and Max's larger ones were the only proof that they were moving at all. Panic began to bubble in her chest, hot and sharp. She stopped, tears welling in her eyes, her small body trembling. She had no idea which way to go. It was Max who took command. He seemed to understand her despair. He came to her side, pushing his cold nose insistently into her mittened hand, grounding her. Then, he moved to the front, his purpose clear. He was no longer just a companion. He was the navigator. With his nose to the ground, he read a map of sense that was invisible to her, a complex language of broken twigs, disturbed earth, and the faint, lingering trail of their own outbound path. He would trot ahead, pause to look back, and make sure she was following, and then choose a direction with unwavering confidence. He led her not in a straight line, but in a winding, deliberate path, guiding her over fallen logs that were easier to climb and around snowdrifts that were too deep for her short legs. Their path eventually led them to a wide, fast-moving stream, a gash of dark, churning water in the white landscape. Thin sheets of ice clung to the rocks near the banks, creating a treacherous bridge. Max crossed first, leaping from one large, stable rock to another with practiced ease. He turned on the far side, waiting for her. Lily, emboldened by his success, followed. She made it halfway across before disaster struck. The rock she chose, coated in a slick, nearly invisible layer of ice, offered no purchase. Her foot slipped, and with a small cry of shock, she tumbled into the frigging water. The cold was a physical blow, stealing her breath and paralyzing her limbs. The current, stronger than it looked, immediately grabbed her, pulling her away from the rocks and into the deeper channel. Her puffy snowsuit, now waterlogged, became a heavy weight dragging her down. For a terrifying second, she was completely at the mercy of the stream. But Max did not hesitate. With a powerful bark that was ripped away by the wind, he launched himself from the bank and into the icy water. He reached her in 3 powerful strokes, his body a solid, warm presence against her own. He didn't try to grab her with his mouth. Instead, he swam alongside her, using his body and the force of his own movement to push her sideways, angling her steadily toward the snowy bank. It was an exhausting, desperate battle, but he never faltered. With a final heroic shove, he pushed her onto the shallow, snowy edge before hauling his own dripping body out of the water behind her. He had saved her life. Shivering violently, soaked and terrified, Lily could only cling to him. Max licked the tears from her face, his own body trembling from the cold. But his focus remained sharp. They couldn't stay here. As they continued, his vigilance only increased. He moved more slowly now, pausing every few minutes to stand perfectly still, his ears erect, his nose testing the wind. Twice he stopped abruptly, pulling Lily down with a gentle but firm tug on her sleeve, urging her behind the cover of a fallen log or a dense cluster of pines. Moments later, she would hear it, the crunch of boots, the low murmur of voices, as patrols of armed men passed nearby, their forms dark and menacing against the snow. Max had heard them and smelled them long before they were a threat, guiding her around them like a seasoned scout navigating enemy territory. He was her eyes, her ears, and her shield, and every step they took toward home was a testament to his silent, unwavering intelligence. Lily burst through the cabin door like a miniature whirlwind, bringing a gust of frigid air and the scent of wet pine with her. "Dad!" she cried out, her voice raw with exhaustion and fear. David, who had been meticulously cleaning his hunting rifle at the kitchen table, was on his feet in an instant. His calm expression vanished as he took in her soaked clothing and pale, tear-streaked face. He swept her up in his arms, wrapping her in a thick wool blanket from the back of his chair. "Lily, what happened? Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice a low, urgent rumble. "A man," she stammered, her teeth chattering uncontrollably. "In the woods. He's hurt bad." She fumbled in her pocket with numb fingers and produced the eagle patch, pressing it into her father's hand. "He told me to tell you," he said. "The eagle has fallen." The change in David was instantaneous and absolute. The concerned father receded, and the soldier he once was surfaced with a chilling intensity. His eyes, usually warm and gentle, became hard as flint as he stared at the patch. He recognized the unit insignia. He understood the code. This was not a random accident. This was an emergency of the highest order. He set Lily down gently in a chair by the fire. "Stay here. Don't move," he commanded, his voice devoid of its usual softness. He moved with a swift, silent economy, pulling a heavy canvas pack from a locked chest, checking the action on a sidearm, and pulling on insulated, camouflaged outerwear. He was a man preparing for war. As he strode toward the door, a solid, furry body blocked his path. Max stood planted in the doorway, his stance unyielding. He let out a single, sharp bark, not of protest, but of declaration. It was the same sound he used in training when he had located a target and was reporting for his next command. David paused, looking down at the dog. "No, Max. You stay here. You guard Lily." Max barked again, more forcefully this time, and did not budge an inch. His amber eyes were locked on David's, and in them, David saw not a pet's desire to follow, but a partner's insistence on joining the fight. He knew the dog had guided Lily home, had protected her. To leave him behind now would be to ignore his most capable ally. A flicker of understanding passed between them. "All right," David conceded with a curt nod. "Watch my back." They moved through the forest as one entity. a stark contrast to Lily's desperate flight. David's long, sure strides covered the ground quickly, his rifle held at a low ready, but it was Max who truly led the way. The German Shepherd moved 10 yards ahead, a silent, sable ghost against the snow. He was David's eyes and ears, his senses reaching far beyond human capability. He would freeze suddenly, a low growl vibrating in his throat, and David would immediately halt and take cover. They would wait as figures passed in the distance, their presence unknown to the hunting party. Max navigated them around patrols, his intelligence saving them precious time and keeping them from walking into an ambush. He was not just a dog, he was a force multiplier. They finally reached the edge of the clearing. David saw the scene: the massive pine, the slumped figure of Colonel Miller, now looking significantly weaker, and 2 armed men standing guard, their breath misting in the cold air. They were alert, professional. David knew a direct assault was suicide. He and Max circled the clearing, using the deep shadows as cover, waiting for an opening. The opportunity came when one of the guards moved away to investigate a sound. David moved with lethal speed, closing the distance and neutralizing the remaining guard silently from behind. But the first guard heard the muffled struggle and spun around, raising his rifle. David was exposed. He dove for the cover of a tree as a shot rang out, the bullet splintering bark just inches from his head. He was pinned down. He didn't see the third man, the one who had circled around from the other side. Stepping out from behind a thicket of trees, his weapon aimed squarely at David's back. It was over. But the man never fired his shot. From the shadows, Max exploded into action. He was a blur of righteous fury, covering the distance in 3 powerful bounds. He didn't aim for the leg or the body. With the full force of his momentum, he launched himself into the air and clamped his powerful jaws directly onto the man's rifle and the hands that held it. The man screamed, a cry of shock and agony as teeth met bone. The rifle clattered uselessly to the snow. Max held on, shaking his head with a ferocity that shook the man's entire body, completely disabling the threat. The critical moment of distraction was all David needed. He moved from his cover and neutralized the second guard. The fight was over in seconds. David stood breathing heavily in the sudden, ringing silence, looking at Max, who still had the first man's arm pinned, a low, menacing growl his only sound. He had not just helped, he had saved David's life. In the ringing silence that followed the brief, brutal fight, David rushed to the ancient pine tree, his knife flashing as he sliced through the thick ropes binding Colonel Miller. The older man slumped forward, caught by David just before he hit the snow, his breathing shallow but steady. Across the clearing, Max maintained his vigil, a low growl still rumbling in his chest as he stood over the man he had taken down, ensuring he was no longer a threat. It was into this tense quiet that a new sound intruded, a rhythmic, percussive chopping that grew steadily louder, the distant thumping of helicopter blades. David's backup had arrived. Within minutes, the clearing was filled with professionals in tactical gear. Medics swarmed around Colonel Miller, their movements efficient and sure, as they assessed his injuries and prepared him for evacuation. Other soldiers secured the downed men David and Max had neutralized. A lanky officer with captain's bars on his collar approached David. "We'll take it from here, sir. You and your partner did good work." His eyes flicked with clear respect toward Max, who had only released his hold when David had given him a quiet, firm command. The danger was truly over. 2 days later, the familiar, comforting quiet had returned to the log cabin. The snow fell softly outside, blanketing the world in a fresh layer of peace. Inside, a fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm, golden glow on the room. Lily sat on the floor, leaning against Max's solid, warm body, as she watched her father clean his rifle, his movements once again calm and methodical. The soldier was gone, and her father was back. David looked at her, a soft smile touching his lips. He set the rifle aside. "You were so brave, Lily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "What you did, no one else could have done. You were the heart of this entire mission, the one who made it all start." He reached out and stroked Max's head, the dog letting out a soft sigh of contentment. "But this guy," David continued, his voice full of awe. "Max was the brains. He was the silent hero who made sure the heart kept beating. He found the colonel. He got you home safe. And he saved my life. We owe him everything." As if summoned by their words, a knock came at the door. It was Colonel Miller. His arm was in a sling, and he walked with a slight limp. But the steel-gray eyes were clear and sharp, filled with a profound gratitude. He greeted David with a firm handshake, a wordless understanding passing between the two men. Then he knelt down in front of Lily. "I believe I owe my life to a very brave young soldier," he said softly. "Thank you, Lily." But his highest praise was reserved for the dog. He turned to Max, who sat watching him with intelligent eyes. The colonel reached out with his good hand, not to pet, but to gently cup the dog's powerful jaw, a gesture of deep respect. "And you," he said to Max, "I've served with men for 30 years. None more courageous or clear-headed under fire than you." The colonel then stood up, pulled out a satellite phone, and made a call. Lily and David listened as he spoke with authority to a general on the other end. "Sir, I'm making a formal recommendation. Yes, for the K9 Medal of Courage. His name is Max. He located me, protected his handler, created a tactical diversion, navigated hostile territory, and directly saved the life of his rescue operator by disabling an armed combatant. Yes, sir. He's the real deal. I'll send the full report." He ended the call and looked at David and Lily, a genuine warmth in his smile. Some heroes have 2 legs. The best ones often have 4. That evening, after the colonel had left, the cabin felt warmer than ever. David brought out a brand new collar made of thick, dark leather. It was simple, strong, and beautiful, just like the dog who would wear it. He knelt and fastened it around Max's neck. Then, Lily came forward. In her hand, she held the eagle patch the colonel had given her, the small piece of fabric that had started everything. With her father's help, she carefully stitched the patch onto the new collar, right at the front where everyone could see it. It was no longer just a piece of a uniform. It was a medal, earned and deserved. She wrapped her small arms around Max's thick neck, burying her face in his soft fur. "Thank you, Max," she whispered, her voice filled with all the love in her 7-year-old heart. "You're my hero." Max responded by licking her cheek, a quiet confirmation of a bond that had been forged in the snow, and was now, and forever, unbreakable. Sometimes the greatest courage is found in the smallest of hearts, and the most profound loyalty beats silently within a furry chest. The journey of Lily and Max reminds us that incredible tales of bravery and devotion unfold around us every day, often unseen. If you believe this bond is something special, we invite you to become a part of our community here at Voice of Paws. Share their story to honor the hero inside every animal, and let us know that their courage has touched your heart as well.